live, and I literally didn't check my hair before the show. How does it look, Michael?
On a scale of fine to fine, it's somewhere right in there.
All right. Well, this is constructive criticism. I'm tired 1. That's tired 2. We both just got back from the GP in Phoenix from driving home overnight, and we're both feeling great.
Great is an understatement.
We did an episode not too long ago on faking positivity.
Yeah, I mean, we might not remember this episode when we're done with it. But right now, I am here and present, and we are going to do this.
You know who always remember you, though, is our sponsor at Oasis Games. You can check him out at mtgoasis.com. You can get 15% off your order by using the code CCMTG. You can get 4% off of every order using the code Would That Be Good, which I'd like to talk about for a second. So, we've got a lot of thoughts on this code, and I just want to talk about it really quick. So, I have a lot of things that I need to answer about this because there was some confusion on my end, and I've been saying that they're going to change it for a while, and it's definitely not getting changed. And I will tell everybody the reason. So Crystal Commerce doesn't have a setting where Alex can turn off codes being used at the same time. And Alex has a code for his non-CCMTG listeners. That's not even a code. It's just a discount. Sorry. He can't turn off 2 discounts at the same time. He has a discount where you get percentage back in store credit for everything you spend online. So for our CCMTG listeners who have been paying and using the code and checking it out for a long time, you might have noticed the code stops working for you at one point. Well, here's the reason why. So once you get to 5% of cash back or store credit back, the way that the software that Crystal Commerce makes works is it turns off part of the code for you. It says you'll actually get a bigger discount by just using this than you would by using this, even though it doesn't let you turn off the code. Like, even though it doesn't let you pick which code. Now, for a lot of you, you say, yeah, but this is actually not as much as I was getting back because they automatically apply the 4% when you have 4%. So a lot of you are getting 4% back and getting 4% off. So it's actually an 8% discount, basically. That's a Crystal Commerce mistake. So for those of you who are like, this isn't working for me anymore, please leave a comment if you want tokens. This was a really long explanation because I'm still asleep. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, basically what happens is Crystal Commerce will stack things that shouldn't stack.
And then they'll decline things.
And then eventually it stops stacking.
It stops stacking, and you go to the 5% in cash back. But you shouldn't be able to stack those anyway. Alex isn't worried about it. So, using the code Would That Be Good is actually just an insane deal at Oasis Games. I didn't actually realize how insane it was. You're going to get your cash back, and you're going to get the percentage off. I highly recommend checking out Oasis Games. They're amazing. I highly recommend our other sponsor, too. I know that Merfolk did not do well at this GP. In fact, I think that there were 0 decks in...
That's because Nikachu couldn't play Mason every round.
Oh!
He tried to run that one, and they were like, no, you gotta play different opponents.
So Merfolk didn't do well, but you can check out Nikachu on the Mana Base, our other sponsor, as well as their sponsor at Fusion Gaming. I couldn't throw a dagger that good right now if I tried. So thank you so much, Michael, for shouting out our sponsor at the Mana Base and their sponsor at Fusion Gaming and Nikachu, the Mason Slayer. Let's get right into the show. We've talked enough about discounts, Mason getting crushed. Let's talk about our patrons. So if you want to support the show directly, you can go to patreon.com/ccmtg. Become a patron like Justin H. Justin's been a listener for such a long time that, when I see those names of listeners that have been there forever, that have supported me and have always said hey, I'll do Patreon when I can. I think that's kind of the point of Patreon is support when you can, don't when you can't.
Yeah, but ultimately don't sweat it, right?
It's just we do the show because we love it, and we love you guys. So like when I see those people that I love that are able to support me when they can, like Justin, like it means the world to me. So I just want to give a shout out to Justin. Justin actually has our question for the week as well. If you're a patron of any amount, you get a Patreon question. Before we get to it, I just want to say that I had some good discussions about bringing back Hangouts, and I think we're going to change the way we do it. And I actually am going to finally do this.
I thought this looked like a really good idea too.
Yeah, should I just talk about it really quick?
Sure. Yeah, if you want to talk about it, go.
Yeah. So for a long time we had Skype calls and Google Hangouts with our patrons of $10 or more. Right? They weren't well attended. It was hard to sync up times, and I had an idea in my sleepy stupor this morning before I went to sleep about doing Hangouts. Like bringing back the Hangouts for those $10 or more patrons, and then just for those go play a league or replay a league with people of that category. So no matter how many people show up, we get some value out of it. Just in a Google Hangout, and some people requested for it to be recorded, which I think we can make happen. So yeah, we're gonna work on bringing back that Patreon reward at $10 for those Hangouts, and we're going to incorporate, a real learning exercise into them in the form of either going through a league as a group, depending on how many people show up, or replaying a recently played league that we've done, and just talking about the plays and things like that. We can even let people pick from the recent leagues and decide which one and that show up, and I think that it'll work. I think it's going to be.
Yeah, it is. I think it sounds like a good time.
Yeah, the more I thought about it, I was like, man, this is the tier reward that like I would have picked.
And easy for everyone, right?
Yeah, it's really easy for me to do this once a month, right? Like it's like, hey, like
recording a Magic Online League is a big burden when you're playing them already. And hopefully that finds a good balance for people.
I think so too. So that's going to be a new reward that will probably start next month at $10 or more. Justin asks, and you can ask this at any tier, what is the best balance between consuming content and actually play testing to get the best use of time? So here's my opinion about this. And I can go first really quick, Michael.
Yeah, go
I consume content when... Like, I do it through listening to it, right? So I talk about AudioFi all the time, an app that I use on my iPhone to download Magic articles. I listen to those in the car. I listen to podcasts, right? Or I like a pretty popular thing that Michael and I both do is like we'll consume video content when we're doing other things or things like that. I think for the most part, for me, consuming content is something that like, sweet, like I'm on the toilet, let's read a Magic article. Sweet, I'm driving in my car, let's listen to a podcast. Sweet, like I'm in the bathtub, let's grab my laptop, take a bath while watching a Magic video. Like I consume the content like when it's easy, right? Like, and I think that there's so much amazing content out there that's really easy to do.
Yeah, I agree with that. I guess I would say for me, a lot of the time it comes down to consuming content is really good sometimes when you're not exactly sure what you're trying to learn.
Right.
Watching other people play, you can pick up on things that weren't necessarily, like, you maybe didn't go into it thinking, oh, I'm really curious how Jerry sequences his 2-drops or whatever. Like, stuff like that, right? So you can pick up on things that maybe aren't as obvious by watching other people play, and then
this is a really good example. A couple weeks ago was like the Bloodbraid Elf deck, the Bloodbraid Elf Eldrazi aggro deck.
Yeah, green red.
And that deck is so sweet. I didn't have a bunch of time to play it, but I was like considering it for the Grand Prix, and there were so many Magic videos on the deck. I was able to like learn a ton about how people were thinking about the deck, how they wanted to build it, what their sequencing was, and it was so easy to pick up things rather than like it wasn't like I want to learn about green red versus X or whatever. I want to learn about this, but like what ended up happening is I want to learn something, and there were green red videos available at in multitudes, right? And you learn about other decks, you learn about your deck. You can, I mean, it's crazy that I don't have to pick a topic, right?
Right.
Like, I can go in and say, I need to see what others are thinking and give myself an opportunity to learn, which is kind of what I was hearing from you there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that then when I'm looking at playtesting myself, there are more specific things I'm trying to learn, or else there are things that I can't find content for that I'm trying to learn.
Yeah, so I think that strikes a nice balance. Like, knowing how I want to build my Scapeshift 75, watching 32 other people play Scapeshift probably isn't actually that helpful.
Right, but knowing if Scapeshift maybe fits stylistically what you're trying to do, if you've never played Scapeshift before, you might really enjoy watching someone good play a league with a list.
Yeah, it's just two very different, like, the type of thing that you're trying to learn really helps you. I played Michael and I played a league with humans, like, 2 weeks ago, something like that.
Yeah, relatively recently.
Basically, it was like, hey, do I understand the things that I need to understand to, like, play this deck at the GP?
Sure.
And going through, like, to be honest, I think our end result at that league wouldn't have mattered to me, right? Like,
yeah.
It's what you're actually trying to learn is, like, is this something that I grasp, that I could understand? Like, what are the key decision points of things that I might need to work on if I pick up this deck?
If I want to play this deck, how much time investment am I looking at?
And that is a different type of thing than listening or watching Magic content. So I think that's when you're asking, how do I split these? It's like, well, it just depends on what you're trying to learn at the time. I like to fit in my Magic content, whereas for, like, playtesting, a lot of my time is taken up through playtesting with patrons, or maybe recording a video or things like that. So, like, my playtesting, which is probably different than Michael's because of how much the difference in Magic that we play, is like, I need to. Maybe it's not that different though. We're still very much trying to learn specific things depending on how we're playtesting and when we're doing it, right? Like probably the same thing for you. Your goal was to be able to articulate humans to me in that league, not necessarily win the league.
Right. I mean, obviously, it's an easier sell if you're just steamrolling people, but at the same time, like...
Yeah, I think you were 2-0 in that league, and we 4-1 that league with very few decision points. Like, it was...
Yeah, it was pretty easy.
Yeah, and I think that knowing, like, hey, like... And it's funny, because, like, we were just playing Magic, right? But, like, the things that we were actually talking about is, like, hey, here's how you use your fetch lands, here's why you do it, here's when you Coco and the decisions that you have, and the things that you need to think about while Cocoing, right? So, in the end of the day, the fact that we ended up 4-1 in the league actually didn't matter to us as much as, like, this is how Coco Humans plays.
Sure, it was less about, like, exploring matchups and more about trying to recreate minutia in decision making.
So, to the points, we've talked about how the content types are different and but how do you strike the balance? Do you have a balance?
I mean, I think it's mostly just that, like, the real takeaway is, like, if you're just playing games to play, I don't think that it's as helpful a lot of the time as trying to play with a focus. And all I would really say is that, like, watching other people is a really good way to learn too, and you don't have to feel guilty about, like, wanting to watch someone else play rather than play yourself. I think just sort of trying to just figure out what you're trying to get out of what you're doing is really the key.
I like that you said watching somebody else play. I know that you, myself, Matt, the people at Constructive Criticism Worldwide that I test with, we use that a lot, right? Like, I may play less Magic now, but I consume Magic in the playtesting way, the same way, right? Like, me jumping on that league with you is how I could best use my playtesting time, right? Which is a different question than how do you balance Magic and content and playtesting. I think the question that you should be asking yourself is, how much content should I consume? When should I be consuming it? And how can I best spend the time that I am able to play test? Because I do think that at the heart of this question, the getting your hands into Magic is always more powerful.
It is, and I think that, like, but just understanding when playing Magic versus watching other people play Magic is most beneficial.
Yeah.
Maybe allows you to allocate your time better and feel less pressure to play absurd amounts of Magic.
And I would also, while I say that that's the most powerful side of it, I would also say that, like, don't force yourself to be in a situation where, like, you overvalue that time that you are playtesting, because just use the time appropriately for what you have. It's going to be so different for different people, right? Like, Matt Kling played 18 hours of Magic when he wasn't at the Grand Prix this weekend, is what he told me.
Yeah.
Like, the dude played Magic more this weekend than everybody else at the Grand Prix. And you don't have the same time as another person. Don't make this like this person does this, so I need to do this. Make it this is what I can do, how can I maximize what I can do?
Right. Yeah, and I think then it's just figuring out sort of what you need to get out of your time and how you can allocate your time in a way that makes sense for what you're trying to get better at the moment.
Yeah. Let's move on to our hashtag Always Improving segment. Hashtag Always Improving is the point of the show. We believe if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. We don't be doing what we can all the time to be improving. Michael, you at X1 day one of the GP. This is a very good start to a GP. Like,
sure,
this is kind of where you want to be to put yourself in a position to get pro points, to get cash, to kind of it is the position you want to be in going into day two.
Sure. Yeah, I mean X1 or XO would be great, and
X2 can feel kind of like
X2's okay these days. Like, you're live.
You're live. But how did you improve this week?
I felt like I did a good job sort of identifying what I wanted to play. I was pretty happy with like the final deck list that we came to. Basically, we were playing humans, but with companies. I'm not sure that the companies were good, but I don't think they were awful, and it allowed you to do some cool things in sideboarding, like playing humans with sideboard Stony Silence and Rest in Peace. Definitely caught a couple of people off guard. Like, I played Sam Party on Ironworks in the last round of day one, and I mean, between 4 main deck Thalias and then like getting to side in both Stony and Rest in Peace, it was just like a complete slaughter.
Why does Company let you do that?
So primarily because Company forces you not to play like Ancient Ziggurat, which is one of the worst cards in the Vial lists anyways, because you have to mulligan relatively aggressively with humans at times, and when you mulligan into a 1-lander with an Aether Vial and then you can't cast your Aether Vial, it just feels awful.
Sucks. Yeah.
So there's obviously some pretty substantial downsides to something like Mana Confluence as well, and that probably came back to bite me a couple of times, but it is what it is.
3 of the 4 people in your 75 ended up making day 2. I think that Alex had a Modern tournament, but I almost played your list as well. What do you think made you better at picking your 75 this time than maybe other times? You're happy with it, and you're surely not always happy with the 75 you take to a Grand Prix.
I really think that deck selection is probably the part of Magic that I'm best at. I'm usually pretty happy, honestly, with what I take or end up deciding is going to be what I'm playing for the weekend. And I think that like the main takeaway that I would say is, I'm pretty good at playing Magic, but if you start your matchups at like 60-40 on average instead of 50-50 on average, it gives you a little more wiggle room with playing perfectly.
We should so talk about this.
You know what I mean? Like you can buy yourself a lot of percentage by playing the right deck for the weekend.
The thing you just said is like the perfect training grounds. Like, understanding that matchups as a starting point is primo training grounds material.
Yeah, so I think just like, just continuing to sort of plug away at it, and like, I think, like, so I started 7-1 and then lost the first 3 rounds of day 2, but not in like especially controllable ways.
Yeah.
It just, it happens, and I think ultimately, like, at this point, I'm both comfortable enough with my ability and deck selection, and just as a player that I don't really get that tilted by it. Like, it's unfortunate. And obviously I wish it wouldn't have happened, but sometimes you just say, oh well.
You had a slot, right? You got a pro point.
Yeah, sure. I dropped at X5 and then I undropped because someone I know was badgering me because they needed a point for bronze and was badgering me to undrop. So I went and undropped, and then they got paired against someone who didn't show up because I undropped. So they were very happy with me.
Oh, get it.
Yeah. So the real low value plays.
So for me, always improving is a kind of a moment that I had. And just to kind of talk about my weekend of the Grand Prix, so I played Jund to the Grand Prix, not because I didn't like humans. I actually really liked Michael's deck list, but it was a matter of, like, I know Michael wants to play this deck. I think the others will want to follow Michael. I'm really comfortable with Jund. I'll just play Jund so that other people can get access to cards that they want to get access to. It was kind of my thought process. I also got food poisoning last week. As you guys might have noticed, we missed the show. Welcome back, everybody. And so I wanted to play. I had already played a 1K with Jund. Really liked the deck list. Changed like a couple of cards and ran it back. And I love the deck for the most part. Going into the PTQ on day 2, as I 4-3 dropped. I realized that I was too tired to play Jund though, so I audibled to green-red Titan Shift. And there was something that I realized going into the last round of the PTQ. So I was X1 going into the last round, looked at standings, two X1s were going to make it, but I was 33rd. So like I had zero chance. Like it was Swiss -1. So there were a maximum of 6 undefeateds going into top 8. So that might be Swiss -2, to be honest. Anyway, going into that last round, like I knew I couldn't top 8, and I didn't play poorly, but I didn't care about my match at all. And walking away, I was like, I feel like I just gave up 20 booster packs. Not that 20 booster packs matters to me, but like I kept a sketchy hand that I probably wouldn't have kept had I been in contention for top 8. I lost 0-2 to a deck that I haven't lost to in years, and I want to talk about this for a second. Michael, do you have a problem with rounds you don't care about?
Sure. I mean, I think everyone does to some extent. It mostly, I would say that having a problem with rounds you don't care about isn't really a problem. I would say just make sure that cutoff is at the right point for you.
Yeah, but
if you legitimately don't care, then it's hard to put too much.
The thing is, why did I even show up for the round if I'm going to not care literally at all?
Yeah, I mean, because you'd feel bad, like, for one dropping, right?
For X1 dropping?
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, I literally just told a story where I dropped and then got badgered into undropping to play my last round. I feel like I certainly can't pass judgment on you for not caring. Like, the level that me and my opponent played at in that last round was honestly, it was terrible for both of us.
But, like, I can use the opportunity of this round, even though I know I'm not going to make top 8, it's like, I can use this as an opportunity, right? Like, every match of Magic is an opportunity for you to learn something, and I don't know that me wasting that opportunity at a PTQ is, like, that great. And if I don't care, like, I should ask my opponent, hey, do you want to split? Okay, you don't. Well, I concede. Like, I'm going to save an hour of my life. Is honestly...
I mean, maybe that's the takeaway, though, right? Like, maybe the takeaway is not playing matches of Magic you have no interest in.
No, and it should be, right? Like, I feel like I wasted my time and his time, and either I need to learn what is the appropriate time to care about a match, what is the appropriate time to have learning exercises, and, like, what's the appropriate time to say, I am going to get nothing out of this.
Yeah.
A good example of this is a PPTQ way back in the day. I played that I had zero interest in winning. I only went to go play Magic with Alex and Matt.
Sure. Yeah. We've all been there before, right? Yeah. You're just like play Magic.
Right. And I could even if I won the PPTQ, I couldn't go to the RPTQ because of the baby situation. You guys all remember when I took multiple seasons off through pregnancy and stuff. And I get to the finals, and I'm like, hey, like, I'm just going to prize split and concede so we can all go home. This is to podcast listener Nick Delis gave. And Alex is like, if you do that, I'll be so mad at you. Like you have to, you're not going to skip the RPTQ if you qualify, blah, 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 blah. And he, made me play this round that didn't matter. I couldn't go to the RPTQ. I couldn't, it just didn't matter. And I need to get better at saying, this round doesn't matter to me, and using my time adequately. Because when you're a dad, and when you have a full-time job as a product manager, and you run, a media network of multiple podcasts, multiple videos, that hour of my life could have been spent with my wife. I think that it's important, recognizing, one, I do have a weakness of understanding what a round means. So I just want to get better at that, and it's an always improving moment for me to recognize that. Let's go down all the way to Card of the Week. So every week on the show, we want to give out some magical cards to some of our amazing Patreons. If you're a patron of $3 or more, you are eligible for this. You can go to patreon.com/ccmtg. And we want to just talk about a card that's doing well, and a card that surprised me. You went back to in the main deck after conversations with me in your humans list. There was 4 of them in the list that won the Grand Prix in the main deck. I don't know what's going on, man. This is a card that Standard has seen a ton of Standard play. We have Kitesail Freelooter coming in at Card of the Week.
Free booter.
Free booter?
Yeah.
Well, I call it the other thing forever. It's a 1/2 flyer. It's a human pirate. When it enters the battlefield, you look at your opponent's hand, and you get to duress them in the form of exile. So you get to take a card, put it under freebooter. Sorry. Yeah, I think. Turning mic down. Thanks, chat. I think this card is better than I thought it was. And I think this for 2 reasons. Playing it in Standard, it lets you jam Scarab God pretty consistently in matchups where you shouldn't get a jam. Because if they use removal spell on this to get their counter spell back, it doesn't matter. You've already played your Scarab God. And then in Modern, correct me if I'm wrong, the games I've played, pretty often my deck is a Noble Hierarch deck. And just having flyers that also disrupt my opponent is so powerful in those Noble Hierarch decks.
Flyers matter. You have sort of the same thing going on to a lesser extent. It just pulls removal spells that would otherwise hit a Thalia or a Mantis Rider away.
That makes sense.
So it's sort of it's a 2-mana creature that it's basically a flag bearer, except in combo matchups where it's a lot better than that.
Yeah, it feels like it does a lot of the things that you would occupy a spell slot to do anyway.
It kind of does a weird Spellskite impression a lot of the time. It's somewhere between a Duress and a Spellskite, but then it also can attack, and if you have a Thalia's Lieutenant or whatever, it's really not that embarrassing an attacker. It
actually, I watched multiple people's matches at the Grand Prix where there were 2 counters on this thing, and a...
Yeah. Where it just looks totally respectable.
A noble that played, and it's well, this is just great. There's no way you can attack into me because you'll die on the crackback, and I'm just gonna ping you for 4.
Yeah, 4. And a lot of the time you got in some chip damage early, or you draw a Reflector Mage, and now you can crack them for lethal from 12 or whatever. Yeah, it's just it's a card that does not look impressive on the surface, but I think when you have so many different cards that are requiring removal spells, playing another card that increases that density, and then it's obviously great with Meddling Mage, as is Reflector Mage. So it just ties the deck together in terms of synergy in a lot of ways.
I watched a play where somebody was able to, on turn 3, They played Kitesail Freelooter from their hand. They took a card out of. They took a removal spell in their hand, right? Or there was a Wrath effect, and then they Meddling Maged the removal spell in the Jund player's hand off of an Ether Vial, and I was like, okay, well,
Sure.
GG. Like, you are not coming back from that.
It's tough. Yeah, I mean, it combos pretty well with Meddling Mage, but just being a flyer, it's like pretty relevant. It's nice against Affinity. A lot of the time you can snag a Cranial Plating or a Galvanic Blast. It blocks like Nexi very well.
How often do you block the first Inkmoth?
I mean, you mostly just block whatever unless you have something really good under it, right? Like,
Okay. Sure.
It's Humans is a deck where a lot of the time your cards have some kind of built-in card advantage, right? Or resource advantage or mana advantage or something like that. And just when every card sort of snowballs like this,
Yeah.
the board states can just get really out of control really quickly.
Have you played a lot of this in the blue-black mid-range decks or some of the... Or even, just any of the Scarab God decks that play it?
I have typically not been as happy with it in Standard. Just the body isn't as relevant.
I know that a lot of people will have it as a one of or a two of in some of their blue-black decks. Where I actually think this deck shines with Scarab God, and what I was talking about, is actually in the Esper gift decks.
It's very good in that deck, specifically because a Braid is so problematic for you.
Yeah, you get to take their Abrade, force them to use another thing on this, or take something else, force them to use Abrade, and like it has better play patterns. And then the fact that you get Scarab God with it, in that deck
it's very cute if you can like draw step, reanimate it, or whatever. But you can sort of you can do that just in the Humans deck with an Aether Vial, right? So
no, exactly. I think this card is better than I thought it would be, and I like that I have this as Kitesail Freelooter on the show notes. So I'll make sure that whoever gets these next month, I'll write down Kitesail Freelooter or something on your order form. Let's go into our power rankings. I want to we're going to go a little more in depth. Our training grounds is a little short this week, so this week we're going to just really go into it. We're going to start with Tron coming in with 5 points. And I just want to say, I know mono green versions of this deck. No, they're all mono green, right? These are definitely listed wrong.
Yeah, no one's playing non.
No one's playing black green. Okay,
anymore.
This makes way more sense to me. After pulling up both these up, I'm like, black green twice, huh? No, it's just black green because it has it listed with Dismember. But I want to talk about this really quick because I feel like Tron has never had a unified list since the days of Green Red, and outside of the Reach Sanctuary, whatever that's
pretty
called.
Close.
Yeah, like the one number Cool Promise End, the 2 Ulamogs, the 1 World Breaker, some number of Walking Ballista, some number of Worm Coil Engine, 4 Karn, 2 Ugin, 2 Dismember, 4 Ancient Strings, 4 Scrying, 4 Star, 4 Sphere, 4 Expedition Map,
and
some number between 3 and 4 Stone. Lands is like, this is actually a unified list at this point. And
yeah. I think it's just like this list is pretty Field of Ruin proof specifically. That's really where we've ended up. It's just like the number of basics you can play in single color versus. So when you have to play 12 like specific, right? So you're playing 12 Tron lands, right?
Yep.
You really only want to play. I think 19 is the standard number. It looks like one of these lists is even 18, but 19 has kind of been the magic number for a while. So the problem is just that if you play like 4 Grove of the Burn Willows, or Blooming Marsh, or whatever,
right?
whatever it is, you just can't play enough basics.
Not only that, but like the number, like this deck is playing 1 Sanctum, 1 Ghost Quarter,
right. Your expedition maps get a lot worse.
Right, they really do, and a lot of those green red lists were playing 2 Sanctums to begin with, so it's like now you're trapped.
Yeah. before Field of Ruin, it was a lot less problematic because Ghost Quarter doesn't slot into the control decks nearly as well as Field of Ruin does. So you were often okay playing 1 or 2 basics tops. But when you're routinely playing against decks with 4 Field of Ruins and 4 Spreading Seas, they usually go together.
Yeah.
It's really problematic to not have, like, basically, roughly a basic per Field of Ruin.
If you've been listening to the podcast for a few months, Michael and I gushed over the first version of Mono Green Tron that came back a few months ago. That deck was not playing...
that deck was pretty different. It was playing like Eldrazi Temples and Thought-Knot Seers in the main.
Yes, this is actually what I was going to talk about. That deck had main deck Thought-Knot Seers, and it played like basically none of the extra lands. It was like 19 lands, but it did play 3 forests and then just temples, right?
Yeah.
Where I think that this deck strikes a nice balance where it's like I do want just mono consistency, the same thing that we loved about that other deck. But I want like the appropriate number of interactive things. I want the appropriate number of basics. I think that mono green is just better at this point. Like I've been a big fan of red green and green black and green white depending on the metagame. And right now I do think that mono green just has everything it needs. I think this is a fine and a reasonable deck at this point.
I agree so too. I mean, the main reason you would play green-black, I think, is because of Storm. I think the matchup's pretty abysmal for like this style of list. Like this list in particular is running the list that top 8'd is running basically exactly 0 cards for the Storm matchup. It's playing no main deck relics, only 2 in the board. So I mean, I guess he sides in like 2 Warping Whales. He probably sides in Spatial Contortions and Thought-Knot Seers and the 2 relics. But like this list is basically punting the Storm matchup. However, I think for larger events, you're better off just playing a more consistent list and punting some matchups and hoping to miss them.
And are you going to beat that Storm that often with green black anyway? Right? Like it's
right.
It's a risk reward. It's a risk reward type of thing, and I think that mono green Tron is just like I'm going to be consistent. I'm going to present the threats, but I'm going to do it in a way that's like super reasonable. I know that people don't like Tron, but like I'm glad this is part of the metagame because I think that it keeps it from devolving into Jund versus Jund versus Jund versus this version of Jund versus this version of Jund. So
sure, Tron did not do well as a whole this weekend, though.
You know,
a lot of
funny.
platinums and golds played Tron, and none of them top 32'd.
It's actually funny because like day 1, it was like I saw one Tron deck. And then I was talking to people, and they're like, "Yeah, I haven't played against Tron. We get after buys, and like everybody's like, Tron's at the top tables. And then at the end of the day, it just like...
Yeah, I mean, I know Owen missed day 2 with Tron. I know... Yeah. I mean, Corey... I don't know if Corey Bellmeister top 64'd, but he was playing Tron. There was a lot of Tron in the hands of really good players, and it mostly... I know John Stern was playing Tron. I know it mostly did not do very well.
Yeah. Let's go on to our next list, which is Bring to Light Scape Shift. There were 2 different Scape Shifts, one in the top 8, one in the top 32. Jace the Mind Sculptor is unbanned. It's reasonable that you would see a blue splash. Obviously, one of them did top 8 with blue and white. But I want to talk about a few things. So first of all, I love this main deck, Michael. I think that as somebody who's played a ton of Rug, a ton of Bring to Light, a ton of every version of Scape Shift, if you were looking for a solid 60, I would literally not argue with this 60 at all. I would play one less Cryptic and then find another slot for that. But other than that, I think that this 60 in itself is totally reasonable. For the sideboard, I don't like the Platinum Imperium Madcap thing. But it could be better. What?
It's like 2 slots for burn, right?
Sure. I mean, it makes your Bring Lights reasonable, right? You're like saying, this is how I do this.
Yep. I mean, I don't think this deck is very good.
I disagree with you. I think this deck is great.
But I think if, I think this is fine.
I think that Rug Scape Shift is the only control deck I've ever wanted to play in Modern where I was like, I can make most of my matchups work, right? Like, I've always hated Jeskai because I feel like you're torn between two different decks most of the time. And blue-white, I've always felt like...
It's just bad. God, that's just awful.
So here's the thing. I like Gideon just as much as the next guy, but like...
Gideon Jura is just like not a modern playable card.
It's just not a card I want to play in modern. So I like what this deck is doing. Would be my starting point for Scapeshift decks going forward. I would actually be interested to play this exact 75 and see about a few of the card choices. But one thing that I will say is that Scapeshift is in an interesting place in Modern right now. And I want to give a loving anti-shout-out to our technical producer, Mason. So Mason took second with Green Red Scapeshifted and IQ this weekend with a list that played 4 Bloodbraid Elf, 2 Lightning Bolt, and then I don't need to read you the rest of the deck because there's literally no way this is correct in this Modern format. But I just want to talk about Scapeshift as a whole because there are a few things happening. Scapeshift got 2 cards from the unbanned list, Bloodbraid Elf and Jason the Mind Sculptor. So in the past, Volakut decks actually do have a precedence for playing Bloodbraid Elf. But they did this with Rampant Growth and Cultivate. Like, the deck was mono ramp spells and Bloodbraid Elf. The problem in Modern is you don't get to play Bloodbraid Elf with with mono ramp spells in this deck. And even if you did, you would just play Solemn Simulacrum in that spot anyway, because your goal is to pad your life total or be able to attack for 2 into a control deck while like having a consistent game plan.
Sure. So, they just end up being remarkably similar cards, and no one's been clamoring for Solemn in that spot.
Right. But like, if you wanted that spot, you might as well play Solemn. Like, that's just my opinion. Whereas Jace the Mind Sculptor, had I not gotten food poisoning, I think I would have ended up on a Bring to Light or Rug Scapeshift list for the Grand Prix. And the reason for that is because, like, Modern is in a place where if I'm going to play answer decks, I want broad answers. If I'm going to play a non-answer deck, I want to be a turn faster, or I want interaction not to matter, certain types of interactions not to matter. So this leads me to like humans or Tron, or it leads me down the path of a Jace the Mind Sculptor deck that doesn't care if you kill my Jace the Mind Sculptor. And so what I ended up on was like a Jund deck with tons of different types of answers. And I think that Rug Scapeshift and Bring to Light Scapeshift do a better job of that. So I know Michael's hatred of ramp decks.
I just think that this deck is still going to struggle with a lot of the linear matchups that Modern presents you. But I do agree that, like, I would rather play this than any other Scapeshift deck.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that that you get to decide between Bring the Light and Hour of Promise, which is one of the reasons I didn't want to play Rug. It was like, man, like, this deck is really fun, and like it's the best Jace the Mind Sculptor deck I've tried. But I worry how to do, like, what do I do in matchups where I don't draw. It's a control deck where your deck is split, right? You're a ramp control deck, similar to maybe Green-Red Wolf Run in Standard. But like a lot of times, if you draw mono ramp in matches where mono ramp is bad, that's really bad for you. And I do think that Rug Scapeshift and Bring Light Scapeshift, like, their biggest weakness is when you draw ramp cards but don't draw a Scapeshift.
Sure. Or if you draw ramp cards with your Cryptic Commands or whatever, right? Like, you're playing like a very split deck, and if you mash sort of the two halves that don't go together, or like if you draw,
if you draw a mix, it's funny because if you draw a mix, you're like golden. You're like, I'm favored against control, I'm favored against midrange, I'm favored against aggro.
But when you draw,
second you
draw a bunch of lightning bolts and cryptic commands, or lightning bolts and Farseeks, you just kind of.
No, it's true. The second you draw lightning bolts and cryptic commands, it matches where you want ramp, and the second you draw ramp when you want lightning bolts and cryptic commands, it's like, this is awkward. And basically the deck does a good job of playing spells that are a good mix, right? Like Remand, for example, if you've played a lot of those Rugscape decks, it acts as a ramp spell in matchups where it matters. And then, I think that this deck is an example where Remand is acting as a ramp spell.
I think specifically the thing that I would like about this deck right now is that there are a lot less Thoughtseizes than there have been in a long time.
Yeah, people are carding them because of Bloodbraid Elf. Yeah.
Well, and you're playing just more. The Gen decks are playing a couple of Thoughtseizes, but there aren't any, like... You're playing against very few... Like, this is not a deck you want to play against Death Shadow.
Well, and not only that,
this deck is probably almost 0% against Death Shadow.
Death Shadow decks have changed so much to adapt to the fact that they're so bad against the Gen decks, so it's a little bit interesting. We need to go to our next deck because I know that we're going to talk about something very specific. So the list that we have up is Shane Holloway's 14th place list. I want to just give a few thoughts. So we cut a Vault Scourge for a hope of Garapi. Let's get that out of the way. Let's talk about that.
I don't know. I've played it both ways. It's fine.
I think this is reasonable. Like,
I just don't think it's worth debating. Like, it's either something you believe in or something you don't, but it's not like it really changes the deck.
Yeah, this is something that I think I saw on Moto a few weeks ago that I was like, that's a super interesting decision. Let me try this. And I think that we need to figure out if it's right or wrong. And also if Vault Scourge is the cut. And other than that, I think it's something worth mentioning.
It's 100% Vault Scourge is the cut. It's the only card you can cut. And I think ultimately the secret is it's mostly preference.
Yeah. Do you not think that... I know that I saw a list that cut Signal Pest.
No, it's not the same card.
Yeah,
Vault Scourge and Hope of Garapi are just actually the same Magic card for different matchups.
Yep. Okay, I agree with you. 100%. I'm glad we're on the same page.
And if you want to get into the reasoning for that just a little bit, for anyone who's confused, Signal Pest is a win condition. Vault Scourge is not a win condition. You can't cut. We're not cutting. Yep. Cutting a Signal Pest is like cutting a Ravager. The cards that go with Vault
Scourge are also it's not the same thing. Signal Pest goes with everything, yes. And Vault Scourge is I will draw this with my Signal Pest.
It's just a 1/1 life.
Yep. Okay. So there are a few things. People asked me questions this week about the sideboards of Affinity, and I just want to be clear. I got asked about Thoughtseize, I got asked about Spell Pierce, I got asked about the one Stubborn Denial. People are like, is this normal? Is this normal? Is this normal? And I'm like, yes. Everything's
normal.
Everything's normal. One of the things that Affinity gets and loses in sideboard that I want to cover before we get into the actual debate Michael and I are about to have. Affinity sideboards are really powerful in the fact that everything is reasonable. Like, there is a world, if I'm going to play the Scissors, the 5/5, what is it called?
Ensoul Artifact.
If I'm going to sideboard Ensoul Artifacts, I'm also going to sideboard Stubborn Denials 100% of the time. Also, sometimes I'd rather have Stubborn Denial than Spell Pierce. Also, Spell Pierce is reasonable. Thoughtseize is reasonable. Dispatch is reasonable. Path is reasonable. Blood Moon is reasonable. The number of people that asked me, should I have played around this? The answer is probably, you should have thought about it if it's something that really would have hurt you. And that is something
that's the best thing about Affinity, right? Like, you're playing just actual 5 colors, so your sideboard is pretty great.
The worst thing about Affinity is my opponent has insane hand cards against me. The best thing is I also can play anything I want.
Yeah, the best thing is that your deck is absurdly broken, but you can basically never realistically beat the card Stony Silence. Never could, you can beat it every once in a while if you're lucky, but you can't play around it. You can't build your deck in a way that beats it. You just lose to it.
Yeah. So I hope that if you were frustrated by a loss to Affinity over the last couple of weeks because of a sideboard card, I do think it's an always improving moment for you. I think that you can say, should I have thought about Spell Pierce? Should I have thought about Thoughtseize? Should I have thought about Stubborn Denial? And the answer is if it's 1 or 2 mana and it's something that they could reasonably be playing,
you have to try to think about what they're representing. I would say
why did they play these cards in this order?
Right. Rather than trying to think about the sideboard cards they could be playing, try to think about the cards they're representing with their gameplay.
Yeah. I know that back in the day, I lost to an Ensoul Artifact Affinity deck, and I was like, I've never seen a deck play this, and it's so? They get to play whatever they want. Don't think that, because you haven't seen it, it's not something they can do. Instead, think, why are they making these plays, and play against Affinity accordingly.
Yeah, I think that's about it.
Yeah, let's go on to Jund. Jund comes in next on our power rank.
Well, and then, okay, so sorry, the one thing we actually had disagreement about was Welding Jars.
I was trying to
it looks like all three of these lists from this Grand Prix are playing at least one Welding Jar.
All right,
Alex
let's
playing
talk
two.
about it.
All right.
So, Welding Jar. The debate is should you play Welding Jar? Michael and I disagree on this. So here's the thing. I would literally play this exact same list, Michael, and cut that Welding Jar for a Thoughtcast. Because I think they're good in the same matchups, but I think that Thoughtcast is good in more games.
I think that the general thing, it looks like everyone is playing...
Nobody agrees with me. Everybody's playing Welding Jar with Thoughtcast.
Well, they're playing Magilton's playing both.
Is he?
Looks like he cut a Steel Overseer and a Master. His list is slightly different, but I think the main thing is you need a certain density of 0-drop artifacts to make your Mox Opals functional. So you can't really turn Memnites into Thoughtcasts.
So you're saying, yeah, I mean, to be fair, I am still playing 3 Memnite and 1 to 2 Thoughtcasts in my list. My biggest problem and what I worry about...
Right, but what I'm saying is then you're not actually cutting Welding Jar, because the Welding Jar slot is the Memnite.
Is it? Yeah. Is that true for everyone?
Yes. Every list playing Welding Jar is playing 2 Memnite.
Okay.
I'm 99% sure. All these are. That's basically it's all. That's
you're
always
right.
the trade-off.
I think you're right. I think that literally Edge Champion is the difference here.
Yeah, or Master. Usually it's you can play Thoughtcast over some of the 3-drops or whatever, or a Steel Overseer, but it's Welding Jar Memnite. It just doesn't even matter that much. It's just preference.
Is it preference? One of them has to be right. So Welding Jar is very good when you're ahead. It is. If you are ahead on board and have a Welding Jar in play, there are very few games you lose.
The secret is that Memnite is always bad, except when you have to have exactly Memnite, Seer's Springleaf Drum makes mana.
It's true.
Right.
It's do I want my Mox Opals to be the best, or do I want my Springleaf Drums to be the best? And the thing is that Mox Opal is the more powerful of the two, so I can understand the argument of I'd rather have a artifact that does not get turned. It's really hard to turn off my Moxes because of. So I get it.
I think it doesn't make that much of a difference. I like one Welding Jar. It looks like... Alex Magilton's playing 2 and then has cut one of the Galv Blasts and a Steel Overseer for Thoughtcasts and a second one. So, it kind of seems like...
Cutting Galv Blast seems wrong, but I don't know. All of these lists... So, I play a ton of Affinity.
But Affinity's a preference deck, right? You just have to know what you like. The sideboard cards, the main deck cards... Yeah.
How you want these decks to play out. It matters so much. And I think that if there's one thing that I could give about Affinity as advice, it's this deck is good. It's always good. You have to accept what you want your matchups to look like and what you want your post-board matchups to look like and build your sideboards accordingly.
Yeah, but you're basically on 56 of 60 in the main deck, just locked.
You are. It's like a Welding Jar or a Memnite. It's the number of 3-drops you want to play. If you want to play Thoughtcast, how many Galvanic Blasts do you want to play? We kind of talked about the Vault Scourge, Thopter slot. It's a few choices. Make them count, because that's the thing that's going to help you.
Yeah, again, it's mostly just having a reason. If I have a reason and it ends up being wrong, I'm cool with that. I just don't want to play things for no reason.
Yep. Let's talk about the Jund list that came in second place. This list is extremely close to my thoughts on the list going into the weekend, except I hate Fatal Push. So
this looks close to Ruben's list from the Mox.
Yes, it is. It is extremely close. Michael, let's talk for a second. This is a very boring Jund list. Basically, this is default Jund with Fatal Push, and then you have default Jund without Fatal Push. Are you on the Fatal Push plan, or are you on the Diverse Removal Spell Package plan?
Probably depends on how much humans you expect to play against. The more humans you expect to play against, the more you get rewarded for just like 3-bolt, 3-bush split.
Yep.
It's also probably pretty good in the mirror compared to playing things that are more expensive.
Yep. So here's
it's probably worse in every other matchup.
This list is literally 3 cards different in the main deck total than the list I posted for Patreons a week ago. Those 3 cards are 3 Fatal Push for 1 Terminate, 1 Collective Brutality, and 1 Terminate. That's the difference.
So sorry, Terminate, Collective Brutality, and Dreadbore?
Dreadbore, thank you.
Dreadbore. Yeah,
yep.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a Colgan's command difference there somewhere too, but either way, like, that's
sure,
it.
You're
like,
within, yeah, I mean, but this just reads like Affinity at this point, right? It's like, we have like 56 cards, and you get to choose 4 of them.
No, you get to say, here's the removal package I want to play, here's where I want to play it. Do I want to play 24, 25 lands? That 24th land is a removal spell. It is, do I want an extra removal spell or an extra land, depending on if I want to play the Jund or interactive games. That is your decision in the main deck of Jund.
I mean, his deck just looks good against creature decks. Like, he has a ton for creature decks, and I get that as a thought. Like, he played 0 Fulminators in the 75, which I actually kind of appreciate, because if you decide that, I think they're okay in the Jund Mirror, but they're worse than, like, Trackers by a lot, I would imagine.
Sorry, which card?
If he's playing 0 Fulminators in his 75.
I did notice that. So
but this is the same decision the Tron guy made, right? Like,
no, because you get to decide. You get to say, do I want cards for the mid-range mirror? Or do I want cards for Tron? Funnily, my first loss was in the Jund mirror, where I got fulminated 6 times. But like,
so like weird single games can happen, but this sideboard.
Well, why is that a weird single game? Talk about that.
Well, I mean, you're not usually going to get fulminated 6 times in the same game. That just sounds like a lot of fulminator mages. Like,
it was only 2.
I think, in general, I would rather draw Tireless Tracker in the Jund Mirror than fulminator.
You would. No, this is something that I talked about. I talked about this with you. I think you and Matt. Just that, like, I don't want to bring in Fulminator in the matchup anyway because of like tempo loss. But understand, like that is the key decision point of like having a plan with my Jund deck is more important than the plan that I have. And like, if the plan that I have is I'm not going to play Fulminator because it's like kind of a BS.
Beat Tron anyways.
I guess
this is like, this is the same as the Tron player playing 0 cards for Storm because he just says, I can't win that matchup. I don't care.
Right. Yeah. Let's go on to Blood Moon decks. So we have Breach Moon, we have Blood Moon, we have all types of Moon. I had one of my car mates played a Blue Moon deck that played Kiki Jiki Pestermite combo. Like,
there you go.
Blue Moon control is a thing. It's happening. It's doing well. Michael, I think that Blue Moon is real. I've thought that for a long time. I think that Jace the Mind Sculptor is a great inclusion as a 2/3 of in the deck. And we've seen this deck tick up on both MTGO and now in paper through Jace the Mind Sculptor. Is this the Jace the Mind Sculptor control deck? Like, is Blue-White and Jeskai worse than just the most consistent version? I mean, if you think about it, between Lightning Bolt, Abrade, and like some of the blue, like, is there something you need that, like, the worst case scenario? This is my thought. You could play Dismember in this deck, and like have everything you need as a control deck in Modern.
This is another deck that's really benefiting from a downtick in Grixis Death Shadow. This deck just can never beat Grixis Death Shadow.
That was my thought, right? Like,
so,
like you can't beat, or you can't beat Jund Death Shadow either. By the way, let's be clear. Like, Death Shadow style decks are good against you.
Sure, I specifically think you just can't beat the card Death Shadow and Summer Denial in combination.
I think that you can't beat Tarmogoyf, Death Shadow, and Gurmag Angler in the same deck either. I think that, like, that's just a bad time for you.
Yeah, I mean, that certainly may well be true. I just know, having, like, played this style of deck, anytime your opponent, like, you're just not very good against Thoughtseize.
Yeah.
And you're really bad against Thoughtseize decks that can kill you on turn 4. Cryptic Command is just really bad against Death Shadow.
Yeah,
like, in general.
Are you on the in my Blue Moon decks, I want to play as many cantrips as possible, or are you on the I want to be a blood. Like, are you a Blood Moon deck or are you a control deck? Like, where do you sit?
I think you have to play it as a Blood Moon deck, mostly because you have to play a low enough land count.
Yes.
You have to play kind of a low enough land count, but you still have to play a 5-drop to win the game, and you really can't miss land drops. So I think you have to play at least Opt-in Serum Visions. My biggest surprise with this deck, I'm really surprised that no one is cutting some Snapcaster Mages from this deck, because this is the worst Snapcaster Mage deck I've ever played by like an unreasonable margin. You have so few good reactive spells.
Yeah, I think that, you know, when I think about Snapcaster decks in general, like, Bug Death Shadow is the best I've played.
I mean, when you just actually look at the spells that you can flash back in this deck, card is so bad.
I mean, 2 Cryptic Commands is your best thing, right? And that's
by a lot.
And then you have 1 Electrolyze, which is kind of rough. And then this list specifically, right?
I only know because I've tested this deck with Matt a fair amount at various times.
I'm actually a little surprised because if you look at the sideboard, your Snapcasters don't really get better outside of Affinity, right? Like, they actually become real cards again.
I mean, at least if you can, like, board it in Roast and Magma Spray or something. But, like, the problem is when you just have Lightning Bolt and, like, Opt are the only cards you, like, really actually want to flash back. And I guess
at 1 mana. Yeah.
But, like, you know, then it's a 4-drop order. I don't know. I've just been very underwhelmed by Snapcaster Mage in this deck specifically.
Have you been underwhelmed just by Blue Moon in general?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just don't like it.
You can be honest. It's okay. I think that's why the listeners are okay with us being honest. I do like the list that comes in 11th place a little bit better. It has 3 Cryptic Commands, the Izzet Charm. It's playing 22 lands, but it's playing more Blood Moon. It's playing Vendilion Clique. I think that saying that you're locked into Serum Visions isn't true. I actually worry about Serum Visions in this deck specifically for 2 reasons. How many 1-drop spells do you want to play is something I think you need to think about. And then why do you want to play them? I think is the next thing. And knowing that, I think is kind of important with Blue Moon, because it's not like I'm not an all-in Blood Moon deck, right? Like, I'm not playing Spirit Guide and things like that, but I need to disrupt my opponent to the point where when I resolve this Blood Moon, I've disrupted them enough that, like, I know what they could reasonably have, and this Blood Moon's going to win me the game when I cast it.
I think in general, like, my biggest thing in playing some of this deck was just that since you're only playing like 22 lands, it's actually really not very easy to hit 5 lands on 5. And in addition to that, it's kind of shocking the amount of games that Through the Breach Emrakul doesn't actually win.
Yeah, one of the things that I like about
we kept losing to humans where we would like actually Through the Breach Emrakul them on 5, and they would have too many permanents and just like crack you back for lethal.
Yeah.
So I assume that gets better in the boarded games, but like, it's
one of the things
it's just awkward.
One of the things that I saw from my Carmates games, because I was watching him throughout the GP, is that Pestermite and a couple of Deceiver Exarchs. Deceiver Exarchs are so good in some of your bad matchups that I think that one of the things that I saw was that Deceiver Exarch was good, but Kiki Jiki was hard to cast.
Yeah.
And so
Kiki Jiki is terrible.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know what the correct thing is, but I would actually lean towards Kiki Jiki combo over Through the Breach.
I don't know. It's just awkward. Like,
it is. But
it's why I don't really like this deck. I mean, I
don't like it either.
Really
like, I think it's a bad Brug Scapeshift deck, or a bad.
I think I would just rather play Bring to Light Scapeshift, and
yeah,
I don't, and that comes from someone who obviously doesn't love that deck either.
Hates Scapeshift.
I agree with you. In playing this deck, just like if you actually lay this out, you will see that your curve is really awkward. Because Snapcaster Mage is at least a 3-drop, and if you actually lay it out, you will see that your curve is just really, really wonky.
Let's talk about the deck that took first, the deck that took down the tournament. The deck coming in with 13 points, we have humans. Between Aether Vial, between what this deck is doing, Michael, even the list in first place, I can see this looks like the Spencer version of humans. Is this is basically what you wanted to get away from for the most part in the humans lists?
A little bit. I think you can make some of your grindy matchups better by getting away from Aether Vial, but obviously Aether Vial probably just introduces a level of consistency to the deck that is really powerful. And I think in general, the main thing is that you just get so many abilities tied to bodies that, like, you have kind of an unreasonable number of 2-for-1s in this deck, or sometimes more than 2-for-1s. The sideboard is also, like, surprisingly okay for a deck that has to sideboard all creatures. I don't think it's as good as getting to sideboard, like, Rest in Peace and Stony Silence, but, you know, it definitely... You have a lot of cards that really pack a punch. And I think that just in general, like, this deck really puts the onus on the opponent to interact with you, and your best draws are very hard to interact with.
They trimmed a lot to include 4 Kitesail freebooters in the main deck. Is that something that if you were on it, Vial, you would consider doing as well?
I mean, I think all these lists with Vial are very stock. Like these are the human lists from the Pro Tour, basically.
I saw a lot of Mirror and Crusader 1-ofs. It seemed like when I was watching human players play, most of them were on lists pretty similar to this, where like the 1-of package was a 1-of Dark Confidant, maybe a 1-of Starfleet Daredevil is something I saw a lot of in play.
Yeah,
this
list
looks extremely stock to me, where like it's like this is what I want to do. Like, this is it.
Yeah, the list from... So, like, most of these lists... So, not the first place list, but the list that Alex Bertoncini played and the list that took 12th were both, like, basically exactly Jonathan Rossum's list from last week.
Yeah. Can we talk really quick about Alex's list?
Yeah, I mean, calling it his list, it's literally card for card, right? I mean,
I just want to talk about
one card off.
I want to talk about Thraben Inspector for a second. So I going into this Grand Prix, before I got sick, I was going to play humans. Like, I was going to practice with humans and just play that deck at the Grand Prix. And one of the things that was common among humans players is their disdain for Thraben Inspector after testing. Did you get a chance to play with that?
Yeah, I played with it a bunch. It's terrible, but you really, really want 1-drops.
So one of the things that people talked about was playing Kythian. And I want to talk really quickly. So there's a new card that's the 2/1 that you pick another creature and you can sack it to make that creature
into like a selfless spirit, kind of.
Yeah. I actually think that card goes into this deck really, really, really well. As maybe a 2-of. Because people were already like, Thraben Inspector is so bad, I would rather play Kythian in this slot in my Aether Vial versions, that I'm like, well, this is definitely better than Kythian in those decks.
I mean, it's... that card the problem is that it's not really a 1-drop, right? Like, you can have some...
though, right? Like, hold on. Is Kythian really that good? Like...
No, but no one's playing Kythian.
Well, nobody's... Hold on. Every single person I read that I respect said they would rather play the Kythian than the Thraben Inspector.
I mean, I know Mengucci did it the Pro Tour, but I don't think anyone's played it since. It's not in any of these deck lists. Do
you think the Thraben's better?
I think it's better than Kythian.
Okay.
But it's still bad. I mean, like, there are levels of bad, right?
I think so,
things that you begrudgingly play because they suck, but you have
I think these P and Kieran Nallars are literally unplayable in the 75, so I have strong opinions. But I
think the P and Kierans are fine if you didn't have to play Reflecting Pool to support them.
I mean, you just actually... You're playing 19 lands, and you're... I think that playing 4-drops makes your Aether Vials bad. I see what you're saying. How do you... Okay. Now I see what you're saying. Why do you play in the Reflector Pool?
Otherwise you don't have any lands that can activate their abilities.
Yeah, so...
Yeah. But Reflecting Pool is like the worst land that anyone's ever played ever.
Is 5-color humans, do you think, one of the harder decks to build in Modern? Because like I know it did well at the Grand Prix, but it seems like knowing what direction you want to go is actually really difficult.
So I think that one of the main advantages, I really like the first place list. Although he's sort of a little bit scatterbrained.
Oh, really?
Well, like he's kind of all over the place on like which cards he's playing, right? Like he made a lot of hedges that basically say, I think I'm going to play grindy matchups. But he couldn't figure out which cards he want. Like playing like 1 Dark Confidant, 1 Direfleet Daredevil, 1 Mirran Crusader, rather than like leaning more towards one.
So the Mirran Crusader I understand, but I actually think that the split between Dark Confidant and Direfleet is actually reasonable in deck building, because you're saying I want to split my timing with my card advantage. They're both better at one slot than the other, but they both do the same thing on either slot too.
Sure, so, I mostly just mean that like when you're playing 1 Dark Confidant and 1 Direfleet and a Mirran Crusader, like it's all over the place a little bit. They're all good in grindy matchups, but they're good in different parts of grindy matchups.
But I think that the 4th Reflector Mage is the second Mirran Crusader. If you just go to Justin Byers' list from 13th place, it's basically the exact same deck list, except that person's playing 2 Dark Confidant and 2 Mirran Crusaders and 3 Reflector Mage. And what I'm saying is that what you're doing with the first place list is you're rounding it and saying these are both good in similar spots, but they give me better positions in certain types of games where I'm super happy with those type of one-ofs. When one-ofs fill similar functions, but also are better in certain situations, where it's like, I actually don't care if I play either of these on turn 2, but also Dark Confidant's better on turn 2. They're both good on turn 4, but Direfleet's better on turn 4. I'm actually okay with that, right?
Yeah, I think Justin's deck looks fine, except his sideboard is really bad.
Right. I mean, I didn't look at the sideboard when I brought this up, but what I'm saying is, I think that what these people are doing is pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I think it's fine. I just think that when you play 3 different one-ofs in the main deck, it can, a lot of it just comes down to drawing the right one at the right time, right? Like, it can look great or bad depending on how... I hope
our thoughts on Modern, our thoughts on these decks were clear. We're going to talk about what we would play and why. I'm going to go first because I got some Twitter flack for some of my tweets this weekend. I was unhappy at this GP for 2 reasons. One, Modern sucks for a GP. If you can prepare as much as you want and your preparation cannot matter, like in any way, shape, or form. And that's true of all types of Magic events. But I feel like it's more true in Modern. I do wish that I would have played Scapeshift, but not for that reason. So, I wish I would have played Bring Delight or Rogue Scapeshift. Because it's a deck that I know and I love, and I think that I could have built it in a reasonable position. But also, I really like that Modern is a place where you can play what you love and get rewarded for it. And that's Modern's best quality. And I do think that I didn't take advantage of that. Not that it's always correct to take advantage of that, but I did think that this weekend, with the way that the format shook out, I probably should have thought about the fact that people would be playing what they love and or mid-range decks. And I didn't think about that.
Sure. I think I would play humans. I would probably play with Aether Vial in retrospect. I think I got scared off of some of these variants of humans because the online metagame was like pretty blue-white and Jeskai heavy leading up to the event.
It felt like it was like blue-white and burn decks on Moto.
But I also don't feel like blue-white or Jeskai are remotely playable right now. So
no, it's a huge trap, right? Like Field of Ruin decks at large were something that I also was considering going into this tournament, and also Field of Ruin decks did not do well at this tournament.
Right, and I knew that they were bad, so
you should have guessed.
I think that just like sometimes it's easy to look at, like, if you 2-3 3 or 4 leagues or whatever, and you're like, oh man, well I keep going 2-3. Sometimes it's probably okay to just say, well, I'm winning more than I'm losing against Jund, but I lost a couple of times in a row, and then I lost. I got in the Jeskai bracket because I kept losing, and then I lost to that. And like, if your takeaway is I'm losing to things that are unplayable, maybe that just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, and like being able to sort of take nuance from your results, I think is really important. And is, just
to be fair,
don't get too excited about going 5-0 or going 0-5.
If I were to play the same deck that I played at this Grand Prix, I would play... sorry, I feel like I interrupted you at a point where you were ending, but my lag was weird.
It was mostly...
what were you saying?
I was just that you're maybe, like, what I would really say is that the results don't really matter unless they met. Like, if you don't trust yourself enough to make decisions based on parts of your data and not all of your data, you need to figure out why you don't trust yourself and fix that, because that's a problem.
I agree with that. And the thing is that while I would play a different deck today than I played at this GP, I would play like 74 of the 75 that I played at this Grand Prix as well.
If
I were going to play Jund. Yeah. So like, it's not like I feel like I made a bad decision. I'm not switching decks for that. And I think the same is true of Michael. He's not saying, I'm now on this version of Humans versus this version of Humans because it won the GP. I'm on this because the data that I was using was either incomplete or I read the wrong thing.
Yeah, I mean, that being said, I think, like, mostly...
I mean, you had 3 of your 4 people day 2 with the deck, right? Like,
I'd be fine running it back. Yeah, exactly.
No, me too. Like, if I said I changed one card, right? Like, I would play the same deck going into this Grand Prix and be completely happy. Like, 4-3 drop is, like... It's a thing that happens to humans. Like, I'm a human being... And I made 2 really bad misplays during the tournament, and I got a little unlucky in the round that I dropped at. Like, actually, Michael, let's talk about this. Sneak, keep, or ditch. Ready?
Okay.
It's game 3 against Ponza. I'm on the play. My hand is Overgrown Tomb.
Okay.
Treetop Village. Inquisition of Kozilek. Dark Confidant, Tarmogoyf, Bloodbraid Elf, I don't remember the last card.
Is it a land?
It's not a land. It was a non-land card. It was a 2-drop. I think it was either Scavenging Ooze or something else.
Another Tarmogoyf or whatever.
Yeah.
I would probably... mulligan angrily.
Okay, so here was my thought. I
would be very unhappy about it, but I think I would mulligan.
You would mulligan. So I was really close to mulligan, and I was like, hold on. If I mulligan, I'm mulliganing an Inquisition hand against a Blood Moon deck. On the play. And if I draw an untapped land, I'm going to win this game. Like, that is going to happen.
So here's the secret.
Yeah.
I don't think that's an Inquisition hand.
Because you don't have a 2-drop play?
I don't think you can actually... I can tell we're really happy. I'm not sure if it's
no,
on my
we're good.
But okay, I don't think that's actually an Inquisition hand.
Tell me about it.
Because I think you have to play Treetop Village.
Okay, so here was my thought. My thought was, I need to mulligan this, and then it was like, wait a second. If I keep this, I Inquisition him and draw an untapped land, I'm going to win this game. Like, that is going to happen.
Okay, so how many untapped lands are in our deck? So we still have 3 Raging Ravines and 1 Treetop Village?
We have 8, yeah, so we have, so I played 24 lands, I had 0 Treetop Village left, so I had 3 Raging Ravines.
3, okay, so we have...
3 tap lands left.
Okay, so 3 tap lands left and 22 lands left total. So we have 19 hits that are good.
Yeah.
I think we lose this game almost 100% if we don't draw it in our first draw step.
Okay, so here's what happened. I disagree with you, but we're like 100% to win if we play a 2-drop.
But only if you play the 2-drop and the Inquisition.
Well, so here's my thought: I'm betting that So here was my thought: is that I was giving up a 35% chance to win the game for a random hand, right? And it was like, okay, what does my matchup versus Ponza look like overall versus that 35% chance to win?
Yeah, I mean...
So here's what happened.
I don't know. I don't know. I haven't played that matchup enough to say.
I Inquisitioned him. He had 0 castable spells.
Sure.
He had 2 lands, bullcrap. I took a Stone Rain. Opponent now had Blood Red Elf, 2 6-drops, 2 lands, and something else. My opponent went turn 1 Arbor Elf, that was not in their opener.
Sure.
Turn 2 draw, think Blood Moon. Not in their opener.
Right.
I think I kept the right thing, but you just seem to disagree.
So, I mean, it turns out that Inquisition just wasn't going to do anything, right? Like, there was no way you could Inquisition.
I couldn't beat that deck no matter what happened after his first 2 draw steps, right? Like,
I don't think that's true. I think if you just are able to fetch basics and play like a Tarmogoyf, you can
right, but I still have 8 draw steps that are 13 draw steps that are basics anyway. I don't know. It was tough. So that was how I ended my tournament. This is Modern. This is like where we're the minutiae of Modern are something that I wanted to think about. I want to bring up. We should. I think that we should talk more about this, but probably not on the podcast. I'd be interested. I think we could have like a good 20-minute conversation about this.
It's definitely close.
Let's talk about having fun though, because this is not something that I did this weekend, and I wanted to bring it up because of the fact that like I feel like I was bad at this weekend. So this week's Training Grounds is remembering to have fun. Michael, this has to be hard for you, man. Like, you're a future Platinum Pro. You play freaking 40 hours of Magic a week. Is remembering to have fun in Magic hard for you?
I mean, it depends on the things that you enjoy in Magic. I think often, like, it's hard to fully just relax and like enjoy a Grand Prix in the same way that you enjoy. Like, there are things about Grand Prix I enjoy, and it's not always the Grand Prix itself. It's not always the results of the matches. But there are definitely things about Grand Prix I enjoy. It's different than the things that I enjoy about more casual Magic.
One of the things that I think about when I think about like just remembering to have fun is Matt Kling, by the way, is in the chat and said that I was just wrong for leading on Inquisition, and he would have still kept that hand.
See, now we have 3 different opinions.
Yeah, this is this is clearly an interesting hand. One of the things that I think about when I think about like remembering to have fun is that I think of Magic as a whole. And like, why do I play Magic? Well, it's clearly because I enjoy it, right? Like, you probably aren't going to Grand Prix or PBDQs or things like that if you don't like just enjoy the experience overall. Now, the problem that we have is like remembering that we enjoy the experience versus remembering the times where like we're unhappy during that experience. And I think that is something that people forget about. They're like, man, that really sucked. And it's like, well, did it suck compared to what you would be doing, or did it suck compared to like other PPTQs or Grand Prix you played in? And
Sure.
and I think this is a hard starting point. Is like, Magic is fun. Like, you're probably playing it because you just enjoy the game. Now, the difference is, like, winning and losing is more or less fun. And I think that we have to separate those from this topic. So, I want to really quick just talk about, like, the stresses of a match. So, the first thing that I want to talk about, Michael, is, like, we put a lot of value on a gamer match of Magic.
I mean, I think ultimately that's what makes, like,
first of all,
Magic a good time. Right? I mean, I'm a pretty competitive person, and
right.
I think that, like, testing yourself at a high level is definitely one of the things I enjoy about playing Magic.
I agree.
That being said, like, as you roll that into kind of the next point, you put a lot of pressure on yourself to do well.
Yeah.
But I think that in talking about that, some of it has to be defining what doing well is for you and trying to make doing well part of something you have control over, which might be, like, for me, part of doing well is deck selection, deck building beyond deck selection, and then playing the games as well as I can, and trying to move away from putting all of my feelings and expectations on wins and losses. It really helps reduce the disappointment that I feel from, going 10-5 or, losing the first couple of rounds of day 2 after having a pretty good day 1.
Yeah, I want to talk about, like, stressors we put on ourselves versus stressors the game puts on us, because I think that they're different, right? Like, the stresses the game puts on us is, like, the record you need to finish to make top 8, right? Like, that's
Sure.
not stress you're putting on yourself, other than the fact that you want to make top 8. That's a stress that the game is saying, like, this is the record you need to do this thing. Versus saying you need to do this thing is a stress you're putting on yourself. So, expectations lead to stresses. And I think that managing, like, what's reasonable for you, which is kind of what Michael was talking about, is, like, an important thing to realize.
Yeah, well, and I think just splitting results in play is probably the biggest recommendation I could give to anyone. I mean, really the only step. It's actually the only step to, I think, just being happier playing Magic in general.
The first thing that we have here is keeping your relationship with Magic reasonable, right? Which is kind of what you're talking about, right? Like, it's like... So first thing that we remember is, like, Michael, I love you, bud, but you're a pro of a game. Like, that's... Sure. Like, you're a professional game player.
Yeah, I mean, but what does that actually mean? Does that mean that I care more about winning and losing? Like,
or does it even bigger? Can we go bigger picture? Does this mean that for other people it's just a game, for you it's not a game? Or, like, what is Magic the Gathering to future Platinum Pro Michael Hinderocker versus future Bronze Pro Mason Clark versus some dude playing a draft? Like, is there a difference, and should it be a difference? Like, what is reasonable?
Depends on what you're trying to get out of it, right? Like, mostly what I'm trying to get out of Magic, it's like the competition, and I really enjoy trying to play mistake-free Magic, or, perfect Magic. But I think that separates from results, and I think that when you put the onus on yourself to play at a level that is representative of the level you can play at, whatever that may be. Sometimes you might be at a level where it's really just not realistic to expect yourself to play perfectly, and the expectation instead is, like, that when I make mistakes, I want to recognize them and learn from them. That's like a really good goal, even for a big event. And I think just sort of having your goals independent from exactly your results. Like, everyone wants to do well. There's nothing wrong with that. But having your goals tied where if you go, 13-2, you feel great, and 12-3, you feel terrible, right? I mean, that isn't necessarily...
It's a weird line to draw.
Right. You're setting yourself up to be really upset with things that you don't have full control over.
I think of when I think about like keeping your relationship with Magic reasonable. This is something that's really hard for me for a few reasons. One, I would have loved to get bronze this year. My last 3 GPs, I didn't day 2. I have basically a 0% chance without top 8ing a Grand Prix at this point to get bronze this year. And versus so that's a goal, right? Versus my expectation. Even the expectation to get 1 pro point at every single Grand Prix I go to still doesn't get me to bronze. So, like, my expectations and my goals for the year didn't exactly line up. It's like, this is my goal. I'm going to do the best I can to get there. And I think that separating those is something different. For myself, for you, for Matt Kling, for a lot of our friends, I think it's a reasonable expectation for us to say, like, I expected to do this Grand Prix. If I don't do it, I think that I did poorly, and something was either wrong in my playtesting, something was wrong in my decision-making, something probably went wrong. And I don't think that's unreasonable, right? Like,
I don't necessarily either. The only thing I would say is that I think just moving expectation away from record entirely
just different.
Is like,
make them different.
I just don't really... I only care what my record is in that it's a reflection of my preparation.
Thank you. I agree. So, like, the end of this Grand Prix, my thought was, did I play the Jund list that I think is correct? And my answer was, yeah, maybe 1 card off.
Well, like, secondary question, was Jund a good deck choice for this Grand Prix?
Yes. So, on that, did my expectation, did my level of preparation meet what I should have done? And I think the answer is yeah, I played a reasonable deck. It's a deck that I could have day 2'd with. It's a deck that would have put me in a position to achieve my goals. I need to be happy with that. Right?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that generally just like...
And separating that from the fact that I went 4-3 is 2 different things.
And then my second statement would just be that if you can't get your finishes and your expectations for yourself to line up consistently, no matter what those are, I mean, whether that is just like you're not learning enough when you're losing, or you're making the same mistakes over and over again, or you're not doing as well as you want to at big events or small events, or you're F&M, or you can't seem to figure out, you know, how the metagame will move, or whatever. Whatever your problem is, it seems like ultimately you just have to separate your happiness from the results, and instead tie your happiness more to how
the things that you can control.
Right. And in my case, I really enjoy feeling like my preparation was good.
Yeah.
And that's produced pretty good results for me. Not always great, but generally pretty good. And
yeah.
You know, moving forward, my goal is just to like continue to improve my preparation.
And I think that, like, for me, early on, I was like really doing well to preparing for this Grand Prix. I got sick twice, and then my preparation didn't meet my expectations. That doesn't even, like, to me, that's not even the thing that matters. I had teammates who day 2'd with Jund. I had one that got bronze. I had one that, did well. Like, I had multiple teammates who did well with Jund. And the ideas that we talked about were relevant. Like, I knew why I wanted to play the cards I wanted to play and things like that. And the fact, like, the knowledge that I had going into the Grand Prix with Jund, and happening because of Caroline, happening because of my playtesting, happening because of the 1K. I called you before the Grand Prix about my sideboard, like everything that combined for I need to be happy with this, right? I said I would play Scape Shift tomorrow, but I would probably play Jund again going into this Grand Prix.
Sure.
Right? Like,
and
separating the idea of I got this wrong from I did everything I could to get this right is, I think, important.
Yeah, I really just I feel like in general my relationship with Magic has been so much healthier since I've been able to put more focus on my play as opposed to how things actually break out.
Yeah, I agree.
Because when I think about the things that upset me over the weekend, it's not necessarily losing. I mean, I think the worst match I played this weekend was a match that I won. Like, it was just a match that I probably didn't deserve to win.
Yeah.
Right?
Tell me about that.
So, I was playing against Burn, and I won in 3, but I lost game 1 because it was kind of an interesting board state. It was like, I cast a Collected Company, he had double Eidolon in play and was at 10, but the takeaway was that, like, I had a Mantis Rider and a Kitesail Freebooter, and then I Phantasmal Imaged his Eidolon, and I could have attacked with both Mantis Rider and Kitesail Freebooter, but I lost track of the number of the cards in his hand, so I attacked with just Mantis Rider because I wasn't... My thought was that he was going to have to crack his fetch in play to Searing Blaze me out of the game, so that it was slightly safer to leave him at 7 than 6, even with triple Eidolon. And he had a land in his hand and then drew Searing Blaze and killed me, and I lost that game. And it would, like, there was no reason for me to have played it the way that I did. Like, I made really good choices up until I sort of brain farted. Yeah, and it was just like a really bad branch, and I ended up winning the match. But like, that was a game that I played really, really well in terms of like minimizing the amount of damage that I took from his Eidolons and trying to lock him under his own Eidolon, and like I navigated the game really well and really elegantly up until the point where I made such a bad play that it erased everything I'd done good in the game. And
I actually would love to do a podcast on like.
And it was just one of those
decision trees and branches.
It was just one of those moments where you were just sort of like, you know, I play and practice too much to make that mistake. That shouldn't happen.
I think that like when you are playing a match of Magic, understanding what the branch looks like after you're done is like kind of important.
So like, my thought essentially in this spot was that I wanted as many blockers as possible. So I'm remembering more, but my thought was that I wanted as many blockers as possible that wouldn't kill his Eidolons, so that if he attacked me first, I could block in a way that would still leave all his Eidolons in play, and would not remove my Eidolon either. So I had like a set of blocks where I could kill none of his creatures and stick him in a spot where he couldn't win no matter what. Where I was like, okay, well, if I attack with both and move him to 6, then I have to take 2 damage from one of these Eidolons, and I might have to kill one or something. So like it just was just flawed reasoning, and it was one of those games where you lose it and you're immediately like, I should have won that game.
Let's talk really quick, because like I think that what we're saying here is pretty clear. One, we put expectations on ourselves that affects how much fun we're having. Are these reasonable? And I want to talk about 2 things. The first thing is Magic is a game. It's a game with variance, and we need to recognize that. And I think that's pretty clear through our comments here. The next thing that I want to talk about is like even the best players in the world, they try and remove stresses from themselves during these games. If you look at, like, I think Brad Nelson, Paulo Vitor, and Seth Manfield, I think are the 3 that I remember where they did interviews with these players at, like, 10-0, 9-0, like, really good records at Pro Tours. And they're like, hey, like, how are you feeling? And I think that all 3 of these guys I remember specifically, I definitely remember Paulo and Brad saying, I'm just trying to win matches of Magic. Like, at this point, like, I'm 9-0 at a Pro Tour. I'm going to play Magic. Whatever happens, happens. And I think that, like, accepting the fact that, like, your preparation has paid off at one point, right? Like, you're 3-0 at a PTQ, for example. You need a a 6-1-1 or a 5-1-1, right? Or that's a huge PPTQ actually. All right, you need a 4-1-1, right? To like top 8 of PPTQ. You're 3-0. Your preparation is paid off at this point. It's time to just play Magic. It's time to like you did the right thing. It's time to recognize you did the right thing and just play games of Magic. And I think that separating those things is very important. Like, Michael, one of the first things that you preached to listeners on the show when you joined is, I need to put myself in the position to do well. And once I've done that, I should be happy. Like, that's my job as a player trying to win events.
Yeah, I think that, like, when you look at those players and what they're thinking, ultimately, if you ask them in the abstract, you know,
they wish they would have top 8 at 10
sure,
out.
I mean,
like
obviously,
100% of the time.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you'd like to top 8, but you don't top 8 by wishing you would top 8. You top 8 by, you know, looking at your next hand and mulliganing if you have to mulligan, and, you know, keeping if you have to keep, and fetching the right land with your windswept. Like, it's just, you keep doing the stupid little things over and over again. You can't win, you know, 4 matches at a time.
No, it's true. Like, the moment where Paulo or Brad is 10-0, and they're like, what are you thinking right now? It's like, I'm thinking that whatever the freaking heck I did to start this event was correct, and it's time to keep doing that. So I just need to figure out what that was.
I mean, not even that sometimes, right? I mean, sometimes they might be thinking, oh man, I really made a pretty bad mistake last round. How should I have played that differently? Like,
yes.
It's just, your record doesn't really matter. Your record tends to be a reflection over a large period of time of how well you're playing.
Yeah, you get to the same point, right? Where it's like, I'm 10-0, but like what actually matters is my next decision. So getting to the point where I'm at the top of this Pro Tour actually comes down to micro decisions. And the reason we preach separating your results is because micro decisions win you games. Looking at your results makes you think about what result you need. Like, those are just, they just are so separate that the important thing is, like, Magic is a game. You should be having fun. And what is fun for you, right? What is fun for you is, did I make this correct decision? And making the things that matter fun for you is just so much more important than, like, well, I didn't X3 this Grand Prix, so I guess I can only get 2 or 1 pro point, so I guess this Grand Prix doesn't matter. It's just so stupid. Like, at the end of the day, doing the right thing 1,000 times, for me, is more fun. And trying to get the number of correct decisions to the highest point possible is more fun than any other decision I could make.
Yeah, just you're just trying to get the minutia right consistently, and when it's, you know, sometimes it gets weird and you make a play that's a little bit unintuitive and ends up being right. And I mean, I think, like, those are all good feelings, and ultimately, if you can just look at Magic as more, and like a tournament is the result of a lot of individual plays rather than, you know, 12 rounds or however many rounds you're playing, whatever event. Yeah. Like, it just has to do with the plays you make. You can remove a lot of the feelings of lack of control, because the secret is that you can play basically a billion Magic tournaments, so it doesn't really matter if you get unlucky sometimes, because there's just always another one, right? Like, focusing on only the outcome rather than how we got there and what opportunities you had to play better or what mistakes you made, it's just not really very helpful.
Let's wrap this up with business versus fun balance. Magic is all business for me at this point, Michael. So I'm in a really bad spot. Like, if I'm playing Magic, it's a stream, it's a testing for an event, it's teammates, it's whatever. I think that you might be in a pretty similar spot. Like, When was the last time you cube drafted?
I can't remember, but I think that the things that I find fun about Magic have maybe shifted a little bit too. So, you know, I wouldn't say that my relationship with Magic is worse. It's just different.
Is remembering that the thing that you love about Magic, that improvement, does that make those losses easier for you? Because for me, it does. Like it was really funny. One of the players that I was with this weekend was like, Spencer, you seem so apathetic. And it's like, I'm not apathetic. Like, the truth is that I know that I made correct decisions up to this point. It's about continuing to make correct decisions. And those decisions that I make that are good, those are fun for me. Like, it's good to be rewarded for those things. And, you know, understanding what those are and how those work is more important at the end of the day than like what defining fun for you is more important at the end of the day, and your relationship with Magic is better at the end of the day than just saying I need to execute this Grand Prix or F me.
Yeah, and I mean, I think ultimately, like, how satisfying would it be if you top 8 at a Grand Prix but every opponent mulliganed to 5 in every game?
I love going to the Pro Tour, so it'd be a little satisfying, but probably not what I would want.
I mean, ultimately, like, when you play Magic, is the goal to win, or is the goal to play the best you can play? Now, I mean, obviously, if your opponent's, like, to do well, you generally do have to have things work out for you a little bit. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that, you know, your opponents can run hotter than the sun and you can run ice cold and, like, you can still win every match. That's not real. But at the same time, like, I think you'd rather play a game where you generally feel like decisions matter because it's just more interesting. It's more engaging.
Don't forget to go to patreon.com/CCMTG to become a patron of the show. You can find me at Spencer13H. You can find Michael at Magic Mike MDG. You can find Mason at Mason E. Clark. You can follow the podcast at CCMTG. You can join the Constructive Criticism family if you're a patron of $5 or more. You can join the Constructive Critics group. You can join the conversation on Discord or on Twitter. Go to the bios page. There's a link to the Discord. You can tweet at us with hashtag Would That Be Good. Hashtag Would That Be Good is our Twitter outreach program. If you tweet it, we'll read it. You can message me on MTGO at Spencer13H or Quinn at Urship. It's URTHSTYRPE to join the clan. If you tweet it, we'll read it with hashtag Would It Be Good. Mason is specifically going to be reading these this week. And we start with
Beck Roma Angel of Cake is his Twitter handle. I found it earlier.
What?
It's from 3-6 because it's 2 weeks ago. We missed last week's episode.
Oh, my first one that I have is Matthew Reichs.
Oh, I thought we had read that one last. Oh, that's my bad. That's a 6 out of 5. I'm dumb. Matthew Reichs tweets, won the FNM, the free box tournament in my first standard action in 4 months. Hashtag Would It Be Good. Hashtag feels good. That does feel good.
I like winning boxes.
Yeah,
I have a box in my backpack. I need to get rid of it.
Well, does it have cards in it?
Yeah.
All right, moving on.
Yeah.
If Becca Roma Angel of Cake tweets, if I get wrecked repeatedly at Candyland by my wife and 2-year-old son, hashtag Would That Be Good for saving up my good luck karma for playing Magic. So I think does that saving up because they seem to have every round of Candyland my little guy has requested these last few days has gone. I don't
think that's how luck works, but I mean, Candyland is just a variance game, right? Like you just roll dice.
Having your 2-year-old win sounds great.
Yeah, I mean, I might cheat, right? Like I might actually hit double ones to let my 2-year-old win Candyland. So
yeah, sounds like a good time to me.
You lose to your 2-year-old on purpose. It's very obvious.
Okay, Andrew.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to read it, Michael?
Sure. Andrew tweets, he retweets someone else who says, it's okay to want to be the best you can at things that matter to you. Maybe it's your job, maybe it's a game, maybe it's writing, running, or art. But just remember that success or failure along these axes does not determine your worth. You're great just for being you.
Yeah, I think that it's important. Like, we talked a lot about this, but I think that one of the things we didn't mention is, like, your record is not your self-worth. Like...
It never should be.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I tweet, never forget Vidalcan Aether Mage, the best and worst designed Magic card of all time. Hashtag would that be good. Now, Michael, without looking at the card, do you know what this card does?
I do. It's the Wizard Cycler.
Yep, so it's 1 in the blue.
But I don't know its other... It does something else.
Okay.
Because it only gets played for this Wizard Cycling part, right?
Not unless you got a lot of slivers in your metagame, because it's a
Yeah, what do you... Why is this the worst design Magic card of all time? That seems so aggressive.
I don't know, I was just being hyperbolic.
It is sort of a... Oh, okay, so I'm looking at it now. It is sort of a strange Magic card in that it's a mana war for slivers specifically that also Wizard cycles and has flash.
I have to assume it's a story card. That's the only thing that makes sense.
Sean G says, turn 2, Constrictor, turn 3, Cartouche, turn 4, Hadonna's Climb, turn 5, Flip the Snake. Hashtag would be good. Hashtag jump. Hashtag I blame Mason. Yeah, I mean...
Yeah, that sounds pretty good, man.
Sultai Pogo Stick with Cartouche is just fun times. 3-3 on the PPTQ, just 5-0 my first competitive league with Snakes and Ladders. Hashtag would that be good? Hashtag thanks Mason. Hashtag CCMDG. I think next week we have Jay Dean coming on to actually specifically talk about Snakes and Ladders, so stay tuned. Let it be known that the filter line is the best possible draw in Jund. This is super funny. So we're at the Grand Prix. We're talking about Jund lists, and I'm with Corey and Danny, and Danny's like, you should play 2 filter lands because it lets you play more
Treetop Villages.
And Mason's like making fun of our teammate Caroline for this, but like actually that filter land's insane. Like
it would have been the best draw in your Ponza game. On turn 2, you would have been able to play a 2-drop.
It actually would have been insane. Had I just drawn that, I actually just would have won.
Yeah. I'm just tweeting facts.
No, you're literally trying to make fun of her. But you're so wrong on, like, it's actually an insane card in your deck.
I just like that. I was like, well, so I tweeted a picture along with it. In the picture I said, is it really the best draw or are you being hyperbolic? And she's like, it's definitely the best draw.
No, like, it's actually like, it's actually one of the best draws in your deck in a lot of situations.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
sure. A single land that makes black in a deck that wants black is...
No, it's like one of your... It's like... There's probably not a situation where it's not your best third land. It's...
Sure.
But it's often probably not your best, like... It's never your best first land, that's for sure.
Incorrect. It's always the best draw. We just started that whole conversation with that.
But, like, being the best draw, it means that you kept a hand and it's off the top of your deck, and that's probably usually true.
I did that a lot this weekend with a lot of one-landers. All right, let's move on. When you have them broke, at Jessica Ascendancy, hashtag would that be good? I tweeted.
All right.
Yeah.
I want to understand.
All right. So basic. Yeah.
Well, let me talk.
I'm sorry. You said you understand. I was going to tell you the story.
Well, they need context, Mason. Context. It's a podcast.
Yeah, I'm aware.
All right.
Do they need context?
Do they really?
If this tweet disappeared into
Twilight Mire, that's the real question.
All right, so here's what happened. So apparently Mason Clark is making fun of Andrew. This is a typical thing that happened. Apparently, in the Disciples of Hazrat, his name is the guy from hashtag Would It Be Good. Basically, I need to understand something. Mason.
Sorry, it's just funny. Sorry, keep going. I'll calm down.
All right, we're done with this one.
No, I need. No one
cares.
What is rock bottom? I don't understand.
He's hit rock bottom because I've daggered him so much that when I don't dagger him, he comes to me asking for the daggers, that he needs them in his life. That's when he's really hit rock bottom.
You're just a rude human. You're just rude to human beings.
Wrong.
Jared says, a very true lesson. I should never forget. Hashtag it matters. Hashtag was improving. And one of the... this is Colin Smolin saying, one of my least favorite phrases in Magic is, quote, it didn't end up mattering. I think this is just... we talk about this a lot. Like, a mistake is a mistake, and you should recognize that. Like...
Yep.
Kyle says pepperoni, sausage, pineapple, jalapeno pizzas from Toppers. Hashtag that would be good. Hashtag it would be, and then he couldn't even spell the last word
because he was so excited about the pineapple on his pizza.
So yeah, he got too excited about pizza.
Yeah. So here's the thing.
In general, like
apparently some guy from Degrassi talked about how he liked pineapple on pizza, and people are like, "Okay, this is now a fact." There's a lot of people on Degrassi. That's all I'm saying. Like,
How many of them are
you're-
called Drake, though?
I mean, before Degrassi, none of them. So,
You don't know
like,
Drake like that.
sweet. Like, Degrassi actors like pineapple on pizza. But to be fair, 100% of the Canadians I know like pineapple on pizza. And that Degrassi guy's from Canada. So, like,
so it's a regional affliction.
yeah, it's just a problem with the region. It's, like, not a thing that matters. Andrew says, got my first trophy with this pile. This is one of the worst decks I've ever seen. Andrew, I don't know, man. You've posted some lists.
What is this deck's curve?
1, 2, 3,
4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4,
Oh,
4.
yeah.
There are so many 4s.
There's 9
There's
4-drops
no
in this
way.
deck. I'm good job on your trophy. You clearly did something right. I love you, Andrew.
Andrew
I love
tweets,
you.
casually splashing Zakama in blue-white is the best. Hashtag would that be good?
I actually don't know what this tweet means.
Because I think he's playing...
I'm assuming this is sealed still.
Yeah, sealed or draft.
Oh. Okay.
LSV says
Yeah.
he'd like always take that card, so I don't know. I know splashing and
Yeah,
trash.
I mean, I'm sure if you cast it, you win.
Hold on. I just want to be known that I love Andrew and I'm not like making fun of this deck, but also you have 9 4-drops.
Yeah, 9 4-drops like a lot. Although,
I'm changing his name.
this is a draft. This is definitely a draft.
This
There
is
are,
just
like,
a bad draft deck. Like
no,
you
he
won.
did draft. He was drafting at that point.
This is just a bad draft
Yeah.
deck. Like, I'm glad you got a trophy, but like, this is bad. It's a bad deck. Just
Like
won the
a lot
Lantern Mirror. Hashtag I love it. Hashtag will be good. Scotty came up to me to tell me about this Lantern Mirror, and I honestly, good. I don't know. Like, I don't have an opinion about Lantern. People hate this deck. I think it's whatever. Like,
It's fine. It's a deck.
Interacts in
Shout-
most modern decks, so...
shout out to Spencer13H for the coolest moment of the weekend. Having a community figure recognize you feels amazing. Hashtag will be good. Scotty brought up one of his friends up to me to tell me about buying a deck. I did a deck trick on. I met a lot of awesome people this weekend, and I'm drunk enough. Let's talk about this. So I have an anti-shout to a few people. One of them being Alex Sidner, one of them being Austin Godels. Like, the fact that people are so rude to Michael and I about the fact that people come up to us and like are happy to meet us is kind of BS, and it really upsets me. Like, Michael should be excited about those moments where people are excited to meet him, and instead our friends are like kind of rude to us about it. And I just want to give an anti-shout to you. Like, screw you. Like, people are going to be excited about the things they're excited about, and like the fact that our friends make fun of them is like complete BS to me, and like kind of screw you. Like, I was excited about meeting Ruben for the first time. He's now one of my good friends. I was excited about meeting Paulo for the first time. He's a person I can talk to all the time. Like, KYT's like one of my very good friends that I can trust. And like, I hope that you never are scared of coming up to us because we think it's weird, because we don't think it's weird. Like, I too look up to people in Magic and forget what somebody's gonna...
if I'm weird, it's just me.
Well, Michael's just a weird
sometimes I'm
human.
just on one. Like,
Yeah,
That's
that's just...
the one that met Michael as a fan, and then afterwards, it really is him. As someone who went through the experience.
No, but like somebody
just
asked
kind of
me
a
for a
broken
token
individual.
this weekend, and I handed one to them, and then somebody behind me made fun of them for asking for a token. I just want to say, just ignore that. Like, screw that person. Like, thank you so much for asking for tokens of me and Michael. We do the show for you. I'm sorry that my friends are jerks. Like, but I do know that it embarrassed somebody this weekend, and it was really upsetting to me. And I want to thank Scotty for coming out. Like, it's cool that you thought it was cool I recognized you. Also, thank you so much for being a person that I could recognize by being
Haven't
a part
you
of
met
this.
Scotty? Like,
Twice.
yeah. I was gonna say, I feel like I've met Scotty a number of times. I think
Yeah,
I probably
but
recognize
I
Scotty.
mean, thank you, Scotty, for being a fan.
Also from seeing his Twitter picture so much.
yeah, I do know Scotty.
Yeah. Like,
pretty
if he looks really different than this, I might not recognize him because I feel like I see this a lot.
Yeah, but I mean, you probably saw Scotty like 3 times this weekend. And, that's Scotty, right? Like, we just know who that is. But don't feel bad or don't feel ashamed. I know that somebody asked me for tokens this weekend and got made fun of, and I just want to say, sorry that my friends are jerks. Like,
It's really...
they're jerks. My friends are jerks, but they're not making fun of you. They're actually making fun of me. I hope you know that.
My friends made fun of me when I saw the professor at Indy, and I was like trying to get his attention, and he didn't hear me, and so I had to like run to him so I could like thank him for his content. And I was like, oh, that's what I'm gonna do. I like his content.
Everyone gets made fun of for something.
Except for Michael. He's the
What?
best.
I
don't
get
know.
made fun of
Mason
literally
Clark
so
is-
much.
Mason Clark says hashtag other be good with no context. So
There's a picture above it. It's all.
I'm not reading this though. This is disturbing. Don't find that
affiliate
tweet.
streamer with Twitch. Thanks for everybody who followed. This is one of our listeners, Egby. He's from Australia. He's got a GP top 8. Please follow him. He's been streaming from Australia lately. It's cool to see. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. Don't forget to check out our sponsors at Oasis Games and Fusion Gaming. Thank you so much to Mason for hashtag with be good. Thank you so much to Michael for coming on. Thank you so much to our listeners. Sorry, Michael and I were tired. I'm sure this podcast is very different because I don't remember it. So
it was a long drive back, and then I made the terrible mistake of taking a nap before the podcast, and I thought it might make me feel better, and it didn't really do that. So, yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you guys all next week.